What if everything you believe about reality is an illusion? What if both ancient wisdom and modern science are whispering the same truth? And what if the key to unlocking this truth lies not in what we see, but in what we don't? Let's begin with a question that has echoed through both spiritual halls and scientific laboratories. Is reality truly what it seems? For centuries, we've walked through the world assuming its solidity, that what we see, touch, and measure is the complete story. But beneath the surface of things, both Buddhism and quantum physics suggest something radically different and deeply interconnected. For more than 2,000 years, Buddhist teachings have explored this mystery through the lens of emptiness, revealing that all things which appear solid, permanent, and independent are, in fact, fluid, ever-changing, and woven together through a web of interdependence. Mountains, emotions, even our thoughts, nothing exists on its own. Everything arises due to causes and conditions, and everything is subject to change. On the other hand, quantum physics, in the realm of cutting-edge science, has arrived, surprisingly, at strikingly similar insights. At the tiniest scale of existence, particles behave in ways that defy our usual logic. They exist in multiple states at once. Their behavior can shift just by being observed. And most astonishingly, particles that are light years apart can be entangled, responding to each other in perfect coordination, as though space and time don't separate them at all. These two seemingly unrelated traditions, one spiritual, one scientific, converge on a powerful truth. Reality is not fixed, not separate, not independent. Rather, it is interconnected, impermanent, and deeply relational. The Buddhist concept of shunyata, or emptiness, doesn't mean nothingness. Instead, it points to the absence of any inherent, separate existence. Everything exists because of everything else. Likewise, in quantum physics, nothing exists in isolation. Particles are not tiny, standalone marbles. They're patterns in a sea of energy, influenced by observation, context, and connection. Both Buddhism and quantum theory dismantle the old picture of a mechanical universe made up of discrete, unchanging parts. In its place, they offer a vision of reality that is dynamic, dependent, and profoundly alive. They invite us to question our assumptions and to open ourselves to a much deeper truth. As we continue to explore these fascinating intersections, a new vision begins to form, one where the universe is no longer seen as a cold machine, but as a vibrant, ever-shifting tapestry of relationships. So, what exactly is shunyata, and how can we begin to understand it beyond words and definitions? Let's take a closer look. Building on this understanding of interdependence, let's explore how emptiness is not just a lofty idea, but something we can witness in the most ordinary moments of life. Take a moment to observe something as simple as a wooden chair. At first glance, it seems to stand alone, a solid, self-contained object. But the deeper you look, the more that illusion begins to dissolve. The chair is not just a chair. It is the result of many elements coming together. The tree that gave the wood, the sun and rain that nourished that tree, the hands of the carpenter, the tools that shaped the frame, the idea in someone's mind that gave it form. Without any one of these, the chair as we know it would not exist. This everyday example beautifully illustrates the Buddhist teaching of dependent origination, or paticca samuppada. According to this profound insight, nothing arises independently. Everything depends on something else. A flower cannot bloom without the seed, the soil, the sunlight, and the rain. Remove even one of these causes, and the flower cannot be. Notice, none of these elements are the flower, but without them, the flower is impossible. This is the heart of interdependence, and with it comes a deeper truth. Everything is in motion. Nothing is fixed. All things, all experiences, all beings are shaped by an ever-shifting dance of causes and conditions. This is the impermanence of life, not as a cold fact, but as a living truth that, once understood, has the power to transform how we see the world. When we recognize this, the teaching of emptiness becomes more than an intellectual idea. It becomes a path to inner freedom. Why? Because when we cling to the notion that things, or people, or feelings are permanent and unchanging, we inevitably suffer. We become attached to what pleases us and resist what we dislike, forgetting that all of it is fleeting, that nothing stays the same. But emptiness gently invites us to let go, to loosen our grip, not by denying existence, but by seeing it clearly, as fluid, changing, and deeply connected. In Buddhist practice, one of the most powerful ways to realize this truth is through meditation. Sit quietly and observe your thoughts. You'll see they don't come from nowhere. They rise, shift, and vanish, shaped by what you hear, remember, feel, or sense in your body. No thought has a life of its own. They are all dependent, fleeting, woven into the conditions that gave rise to them. This insight doesn't end with thoughts. It ripples outward to everything we experience. The Buddha, ever skillful in his teaching, used vivid metaphors to describe reality: a bubble, a mirage, a dream, things that seem solid at first glance but vanish when closely examined. These images are not meant to depress or frighten us. On the contrary, they're reminders that what we cling to most tightly may not be as solid as we think. And in this realization lies great liberation. Emptiness, then, is not a doctrine of despair. It is a doorway to peace, a way to step off the wheel of craving and resistance. By seeing the emptiness in all things, we are not giving up on life. We are learning to move with it instead of against it. And when we live with that kind of wisdom, our hearts soften. Compassion naturally arises. We become less reactive, more present, and more attuned to the ever-changing beauty of this shared existence. So how can we bring this understanding of emptiness into our daily lives, not just in meditation, but in the way we relate to others, to ourselves, and to the world around us? As we deepen our understanding of emptiness, a powerful truth begins to emerge. Not only does it reshape how we see the world around us, but it also challenges how we see ourselves. According to the Buddha, what we commonly refer to as the self is not a singular, unchanging entity. Instead, it is a dynamic collection of 5 elements known as the 5 aggregates: skandhas, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These components, when examined closely, are constantly shifting, arising, and dissolving in response to conditions, much like waves on the surface of the ocean. There is no permanent core, no fixed I hiding beneath them. The belief in a separate, independent self is one of the deepest illusions we carry. But once we begin to see through this illusion, through the realization of anatta, or no self, a profound transformation can occur. We no longer feel isolated in our experience. Instead, we begin to sense an intimate connection with all beings, rooted in shared impermanence and mutual dependence. The implications of this insight are far-reaching. It humbles us. It opens our hearts. When we recognize that our identity is not rigid and our perceptions are conditioned by countless factors, we become less reactive, less judgmental. This awareness fosters compassion, not as a moral ideal, but as a natural response to seeing that we're all caught in the same web of causes and conditions. And it doesn't stop there. This understanding can ripple through our relationships, softening our edges, helping us act with kindness, patience, and empathy. Emptiness, then, is not a distant metaphysical idea. It's a living principle with the power to reshape our daily lives. Now, if we turn our gaze from the meditation cushion to the microscope, we find something astonishing. Modern science, too, is discovering that the deeper we look into reality, the less solid it becomes. Quantum physics, a revolutionary branch of modern science, has upended our classical understanding of how the universe works. While Newtonian physics once painted a picture of a predictable, clockwork universe, quantum mechanics introduces a reality far more mysterious and far more uncertain. At the heart of this scientific revolution is the phenomenon of wave-particle duality. Imagine this. Light can behave like a wave, spreading out in graceful, rippling patterns. But when observed closely, it also behaves like a stream of individual particles, or photons. Which one is it, wave or particle? The answer depends on how you look at it. The very act of observation determines the behavior of what's being observed. This idea challenges our everyday logic. In the classical world, things must be one thing or another, but in the quantum world, particles can exist in superposition, holding multiple potential states at once until observed. Reality, it seems, is not as fixed as we once thought. Another groundbreaking principle is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This states that we cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and exact momentum of a particle. The more precisely we try to measure one, the less precise the other becomes. And this isn't due to technological limits, it's a built-in feature of quantum reality. A fundamental uncertainty is woven into the very fabric of existence. And then comes perhaps the most astonishing of all, quantum entanglement. When two particles become entangled, their properties become mysteriously linked, such that a change in one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. It's as if space itself disappears. The connection between them is immediate, inexplicable, and undeniable. What do all these strange discoveries mean for how we understand the universe? From quantum entanglement to the uncertainty principle, we've seen how modern physics is painting a picture of a universe that is anything but ordinary, one where connection, not separation, is fundamental. One of the most astonishing revelations in quantum mechanics is that entangled particles can remain intimately connected, even when separated by vast distances. This is not just a theoretical idea, it has been confirmed in laboratory experiments time and again. When one particle in a pair is altered, its entangled partner responds instantly, regardless of the space between them. This phenomenon shatters the classical belief in locality, which assumes that objects can only influence one another through direct, nearby contact. Instead, we are confronted with a radical insight. The universe is not a collection of isolated parts, but a web of relationships bound by something far deeper than physical proximity. This sense of interconnectedness is further expanded by quantum field theory, a framework that describes all particles as excitations of underlying fields that stretch across the cosmos. In this view, nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises from the same foundational field, fluctuating and interacting through waves of energy. It's as if the universe itself is a vast ocean, and every particle is a ripple on its surface. Strikingly, this mirrors the Buddhist idea of form arising from formlessness. According to Buddhism, what we perceive as concrete or separate emerges from a deeper, formless reality, one that cannot be grasped by the senses but can be known through direct insight. And just as Buddhism teaches that the mind shapes experience, quantum mechanics reveals that the act of observation actually determines the outcome of an event. In classical physics, the world exists independently of whether or not we observe it. But in the quantum realm, the very presence of an observer alters what's observed. This is the famous observer effect, and it suggests that reality itself is participatory. Rather than being a fixed landscape, the universe appears more like an unfolding scene in which the observer and the observed are intertwined. In this way, quantum mechanics challenges deterministic views, offering instead a universe governed by probabilities. A particle exists not in one specific place, but as a wave function, a cloud of potential states. Only when a measurement is made does this cloud collapse into a single outcome. This concept resonates deeply with Buddhist thought. Just as perception arises from a web of conditions, shaped by thoughts, emotions, past experiences, reality itself is not fixed until engaged. In both traditions, what we experience is a result of interaction, not isolation. Yet, neither Buddhism nor quantum physics claim to offer final answers. Instead, both invite us into a deeper inquiry, one rooted in curiosity, humility, and direct experience. They remind us that understanding doesn't come from clinging to rigid beliefs, but from staying open to what is unfolding in each moment. Through its groundbreaking discoveries, quantum science has expanded our awareness, revealing a universe that is relational, probabilistic, and full of mystery. And it echoes the ancient wisdom of Buddhism, which has long taught that truth is not fixed, but discovered in the fluid, ever-changing nature of things. Together, these two streams, one scientific, the other spiritual, challenge us to rethink what reality truly is and how we fit within it. But where exactly do these two perspectives meet? And how do the principles of emptiness and quantum physics align so closely despite emerging from different worlds? Let's now explore these points of convergence more closely. As we've seen, both Buddhism and quantum physics point toward a world far more connected and participatory than we once imagined. Now, let's dive deeper into one of their most powerful points of convergence: interdependence. In Buddhist philosophy, this truth is expressed through the profound teaching of dependent origination, the understanding that all phenomena arise in dependence upon causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently. Nothing has an unchanging intrinsic core. A flower depends on seed, soil, sunlight, and rain. A thought depends on memory, sensation, emotion, and awareness. Every moment, every object, every experience arises in relation to something else. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a lived reality. And in the realm of quantum physics, we see a strikingly similar insight through the phenomenon of quantum entanglement. When two particles become entangled, they remain mysteriously connected. So much so that when one changes, the other instantly reflects that change, no matter how far apart they are. Space, as we usually understand it, doesn't seem to matter. The connection remains unbroken. This challenges the classical view of locality, which holds that objects can only influence each other through direct, nearby interaction. Instead, quantum entanglement points toward a web of deep interconnectedness, aligning beautifully with Buddhism's view that nothing stands alone. Another powerful parallel arises in the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, particles do not have definite states until they are observed. Before observation, a particle exists in a range of possibilities, but the moment it is measured, its wave function collapses and one specific outcome emerges. This highlights something remarkable. The observer plays a role in shaping what becomes real. Now, consider the Buddhist perspective on the mind. The Buddha taught that perception is not a passive act of receiving the world as it is. Rather, it is an active construction shaped by habits, emotions, memories, and mental formations. Through meditation, practitioners learn to observe how their thoughts arise and dissolve, revealing that experience is impermanent, conditioned, and not inherently solid. In this way, just as the observer affects the outcome in quantum mechanics, the mind shapes the world it perceives. Reality, in both cases, is not fixed. It is co-created. And then there's quantum superposition, the strange idea that a particle can exist in multiple states at once until it is observed. This challenges binary thinking. Is it this or that? Is it here or there? The answer is potentially both, until interaction forces a single reality to emerge. This beautifully reflects the Buddhist rejection of dualism. Emptiness transcends the limiting constructs of existence versus non-existence, self versus other. The Buddha pointed to the middle way, a path that avoids the extremes of clinging to permanence on one end and falling into nihilism on the other. In a similar spirit, quantum physics reveals that reality doesn't sit neatly in rigid categories. It is fluid, probabilistic, and impossible to pin down without reducing its true nature. Both traditions also explore the mysterious relationship between form and formlessness. In Buddhism, form arises from emptiness, not as something separate, but as a manifestation born from a web of causes and conditions. The Heart Sutra, one of the most profound Buddhist texts, captures this truth in a single powerful phrase. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. And once again, quantum physics offers a parallel view. According to quantum field theory, particles, what we think of as solid matter, emerge from a vast, unseen field of energy. They're not building blocks of reality, but events arising from an ever-present potential. So what looks solid and separate on the surface, whether it's a table, a thought, or even the self, reveals at a deeper level a dance of interconnection and impermanence. But how do these insights influence the way we live, feel, and relate to one another? How can this understanding move from abstract ideas to practical transformation? As we've uncovered, both Buddhism and quantum physics lead us to a profound realization. Reality is not as separate, solid, or static as we once believed. Instead, everything is interconnected, fluid, and influenced, even by the act of observation itself. This convergence naturally raises a deep and fascinating question. If reality is shaped through observation, What role does consciousness truly play in the fabric of the universe? From the perspective of quantum physics, this question lies at the heart of what remains one of science's greatest mysteries. The observer effect suggests that particles do not assume definite properties until they are observed, implying that the presence of consciousness, or at least an act of measurement, is what brings specific outcomes into being. Buddhism, for its part, has long held a view of consciousness not as a fixed thing, but as a dynamic, interdependent process. Consciousness arises and ceases depending on conditions, just like every other phenomenon. It is not a solid self observing the world from a distance. Rather, it is part of the world, a changing, responsive element within the larger flow of reality. This Buddhist insight echoes what modern science is only beginning to explore, that consciousness may be woven into the very structure of the universe rather than being an isolated byproduct of the brain. Although scientific inquiry into the relationship between quantum systems and consciousness is still in its early stages, the parallels are hard to ignore. Both frameworks challenge the old belief in a purely objective, observer-independent world. Whether it's the separation of observer and observed in physics or the illusion of self and other in Buddhist thought, both traditions suggest a shift away from duality toward interconnection. And this shift carries profound implications, not just for how we understand the universe, but for how we live within it. When we begin to see that our very perception influences reality, and that our being is entangled with all other beings, a new sense of responsibility emerges. Our choices are no longer small or isolated. Every word, every thought, every action becomes part of a wider web, rippling outward, touching others in ways we may never fully see. This awareness also nurtures compassion, not as a moral obligation, but as a natural response to seeing ourselves not apart from, but within the vast tapestry of life. It's important to note, Buddhism and quantum physics are not the same, nor should they be reduced to one another. Each operates from its own perspective, with its own tools and aims. Buddhism seeks liberation through direct inner experience. Quantum physics seeks understanding through empirical measurement and mathematical modeling. But where they converge, in their shared challenge to fixed assumptions and their celebration of interconnectedness, they enrich both our spiritual and scientific journeys. Together, they invite us into a deeper appreciation of life's mystery, complexity, and beauty. And at the very heart of this convergence lies a powerful theme: the role of the observer in shaping what is real. So what does it truly mean to observe? And how does our observation, in both physics and Buddhism, determine not only what we see, but what is? Let's take a closer look. As we've seen, both Buddhism and quantum physics place the observer at the center of experience, not as a distant spectator, but as an active participant. But what exactly shapes that observation? And how does our inner world influence the way we perceive reality? In Buddhism, the answer lies in a deep understanding of the mind, and more specifically, how our perceptions, thoughts, and emotions are not spontaneous or random, but conditioned. They arise from past experiences, mental habits, and the present environment. Nothing we feel or perceive stands alone. Each moment of awareness is built on layers of causes. Through the practice of mindfulness, Buddhists train themselves to observe this unfolding in real time. They begin to see clearly how their inner landscape, Their expectations, biases, memories shapes the way they experience the outer world. This isn't just a passive realization, it's a living, transformative process. A helpful framework in this exploration is the Buddhist concept of the five aggregates, or skandhas. These include form, our physical body, sensation, our feelings, perception, mental formations, thoughts, intentions, habits, and consciousness. These are not separate building blocks, but interdependent processes that together give rise to what we conventionally call the self. Yet the Buddha was clear. This self is not fixed. It is not an isolated entity. It is a shifting interplay of conditions, like a flame flickering in the wind. In the same way that a quantum observer cannot be separated from the system being observed, Buddhism teaches that the self cannot be separated from the world it perceives. The boundary between subject and object begins to blur. The connection goes even deeper when we examine consciousness itself. In some interpretations of quantum mechanics, there is speculation, still controversial and far from settled, that consciousness might play a role in collapsing the wave function, thus determining the outcome of quantum events. While Buddhism doesn't claim that consciousness creates the universe, it does highlight that awareness conditions experience. In this sense, consciousness is not a metaphysical controller, but a lens, shaping, filtering, and coloring everything we encounter. Buddhism views the self not as a thing, but as a process, dynamic, conditioned, ever-changing. This view aligns closely with the quantum notion of particles existing not as definite entities, but as probabilities, fluid, undefined until measured or experienced. Both perspectives challenge the rigid, traditional notions of identity and permanence. They invite us to see existence as something far more interwoven, impermanent, and alive. And the impact of this understanding is not merely theoretical. It seeps into daily life. When we see that perception is participatory, shaped by how we look, what we expect, and what we hold on to, we begin to live with more intentionality. We become more mindful, more compassionate, more free. Buddhism teaches that by clearly seeing how the mind constructs reality, we can break free from the endless loops of craving, clinging, and aversion. This isn't a distant goal. It's a practical transformation that reduces suffering and fosters kindness. Quantum physics, of course, doesn't prescribe an ethical path, but its revelations of entanglement, impermanence, and interdependence gently remind us nothing stands alone. The universe is more connected than it appears, and our place within it may be more significant and more participatory than we ever imagined. Together, these two traditions, one spiritual, the other scientific, encourage us to embrace a more holistic view of reality, one that honors the mystery, the inquiry, and the human longing to understand. But as we move forward, it's equally important to recognize that Buddhism and quantum physics are not identical. Their parallels are fascinating, but so are their differences. Having explored the profound parallels between Buddhism and quantum physics, it's now essential to recognize where these two powerful systems of thought diverge, and why those differences matter just as much as their similarities. Quantum physics is, at its core, a scientific discipline, a framework meticulously developed to describe and predict the behavior of matter and energy at the subatomic level. Its purpose is to build precise, testable models that explain physical phenomena and yield measurable results. It deals in equations, experiments, and probabilities. Its language is mathematical. Its goal, understanding how the universe functions at its most fundamental scale. Buddhism, by contrast, is a spiritual path, not designed to explain physical mechanics, but to address the human condition. It offers a transformative roadmap aimed at alleviating suffering, cultivating wisdom, and achieving liberation from the cycles of craving and aversion. Where quantum physics examines external reality, Buddhism turns inward, offering practices to train the mind, observe the nature of experience, and realize the truths of impermanence, interdependence, and non-self. Another key difference lies in scope. Quantum physics operates strictly within the physical and observable realm. It describes what can be measured, verified, and replicated in controlled settings. It does not, and intentionally does not, address deeper questions of meaning, purpose, or ethics. Buddhism, on the other hand, goes beyond the physical. It dives into the nature of consciousness, explores the root causes of emotional suffering, and offers ethical guidance for living a life of integrity. Principles like compassion, mindfulness, non-harming, and right intention form the ethical foundation of the Buddhist path. Yet, despite their clear differences, these two disciplines are not at odds. In fact, they can complement and enrich one another in profound ways. The discoveries of quantum physics, revealing a universe that is interconnected, fluid, and uncertain, can deepen our understanding of Buddhist teachings on the impermanence of all things, the absence of fixed identities, and the vast web of causes and conditions that shape reality. Likewise, the contemplative practices of Buddhism, especially mindfulness, concentration, and self-inquiry, can offer meaningful insight into the philosophical implications of quantum theory, particularly for those grappling with the paradoxes and mysteries that arise when the classical worldview breaks down. At their best, science and spirituality do not compete. They collaborate. This synergy becomes most powerful when we consider their shared humility in the face of the unknown. Quantum physics, in peeling back the layers of matter, has revealed a universe that defies common sense, where certainty gives way to probability and separateness gives way to entanglement. Similarly, Buddhism teaches us that clinging to fixed ideas blinds us to truth. Instead of rigid dogma, it offers direct experience as the path to wisdom, a wisdom that arises not from belief, but from awakening. Both traditions remind us, what we think we know is always provisional. Reality is deeper than our concepts, more mysterious than our calculations. And this is where Buddhism offers a bridge, not to more data, but to meaningful living. Where quantum physics reveals the nature of existence, Buddhism addresses how to live within it, with compassion, with awareness, and with peace. While quantum theory describes what is, Buddhism teaches how to respond to what is. It fills in the ethical and emotional dimensions that science, by design, leaves untouched. By integrating the insights of both, we're invited into a fuller vision, one that engages both mind and heart. A life that is intellectually grounded yet spiritually awake. A path that values knowledge but also wisdom. So what might this integration look like in practice? How can we bring this fusion of science and spirituality into daily life where it can truly make a difference? As we've discovered, while science and spirituality follow different paths, their insights often meet in meaningful ways. But how can this convergence between quantum physics and Buddhism move from theory into practical transformation? In truth, these ideas are not meant to stay in books or classrooms. They are living principles, and when applied in daily life, they can reshape how we think, feel, act, and relate to the world around us. One of the most powerful takeaways is the realization of interdependence. Quantum physics shows us that the universe is not a collection of isolated parts, but a vast, interconnected web. Even particles separated by great distances can affect one another instantaneously, defying classical logic. Buddhism echoes this in its teaching of dependent origination, which reveals that everything, every thought, every emotion, every event, arises through a chain of conditions. This understanding isn't just intellectually fascinating, it's ethically transformative. When we see how deeply everything is connected, we begin to act with greater care. We realize that what we do, the words we speak, the energy we bring, the choices we make, all ripple outward. We're not separate from the world, we're shaping it. And with that realization comes compassion, not as a distant ideal, but as a natural expression of understanding. If the well-being of others is linked to our own, how could we not care? Another lesson is found in uncertainty. Quantum mechanics shows that reality is governed not by fixed laws alone, but by probability. There's an openness, a flexibility built into the very fabric of the universe. Buddhism offers a parallel insight. Clinging to certainty and control is a cause of suffering. Life is always changing. The future is always unfolding in unexpected ways. By embracing impermanence, we develop resilience. We stop trying to force outcomes. We stop needing everything to go our way. And in that letting go, we find a new kind of strength, one that can bend without breaking. Mindfulness becomes the bridge that connects these insights to our everyday experience. In meditation, we observe our thoughts rising and falling. We notice how feelings come and go, how sensations shift, how nothing stays the same. This direct observation teaches us, not just intellectually but experientially, that everything is in motion and everything is connected. Over time, this awareness fosters greater clarity, patience, and kindness. We respond instead of react. We listen more. We judge less. We become more present. And then there's the question of belonging. Quantum field theory suggests we are all part of one unified field, not as individuals floating alone, but as unique expressions of a shared energy. In Buddhism, this sense of unity is deepened through practices like metta or loving-kindness meditation, which guide us to open our hearts, first to ourselves, then to others, and eventually to all beings. This felt connection can be healing. It dissolves isolation and replaces it with purpose, a recognition that we are part of something vast, alive, and sacred. And these practices don't just change individuals, they can change the world. When interdependence becomes more than a concept, when it becomes a lens through which we view life, we begin to approach global challenges differently. Issues like climate change, social injustice, and conflict are no longer seen as distant problems. They are part of the same interconnected web we inhabit. And we are not just witnesses, we are participants. Solutions rooted in compassion, sustainability, and collective care become not just ideals, but necessities. The shift from separateness to connectedness is the foundation for a new way of relating to ourselves, to one another, and to the earth. As we look ahead, it's clear. The conversation between science and spirituality is just beginning. So what might the future hold when these two powerful forces, one rooted in discovery, the other in insight, continue to evolve together? As the dialogue between science and spirituality continues to evolve, one truth stands out clearly. Both quantum physics and Buddhism point toward a universe that is deeply interconnected, profoundly mysterious, and shaped in part by the observer. This shared perspective opens exciting new possibilities, not just for personal reflection, but for meaningful collaboration across disciplines. One of the most intriguing areas of exploration is the possible relationship between consciousness and quantum systems. While the science is still in its early stages and much remains speculative, emerging fields such as quantum consciousness studies are beginning to ask bold questions. What is the true nature of awareness? Could consciousness play a more active role in shaping reality than previously thought? These aren't questions science can answer alone, nor are they purely spiritual in nature. They lie at the intersection, where physics meets meditation and where reason meets reflection. This is where interdisciplinary collaboration becomes not only useful, but essential. Initiatives like the Dalai Lama's ongoing dialogues with neuroscientists, physicists, and psychologists have already sparked new lines of inquiry. These conversations are not simply philosophical, they've inspired research into the effects of mindfulness and meditation on the brain, leading to practical applications in education, mental health, and well-being. Such work illustrates a powerful truth. When scientific rigor is combined with spiritual insight, both fields become richer. The scientist gains new questions, the contemplative gains new tools, and society as a whole benefits. But this convergence doesn't just offer personal or academic insights, it has ethical implications as well. Quantum physics shows us a universe where nothing is truly separate, where every action has an influence, where every particle is part of a greater whole. This vision calls us to rethink how we live, how we treat others, and how we care for the planet we all share. Buddhism meets this call with a practical path, one grounded in compassion, mindfulness, and responsibility. It reminds us that understanding interdependence is not enough. We must live in accordance with it. Together, these two perspectives, one grounded in empirical observation, the other in direct experience, can inspire a more holistic, humble, and heart-centered way of living. They challenge us to expand not only what we know, but how we show up in the world. In the end, the convergence of quantum physics and Buddhism is not just about knowledge, it's about transformation. It invites us to meet life with curiosity, to explore the nature of existence with openness, and to walk a path that unites head and heart, science and soul. Through this integration, we gain not only a deeper understanding of reality, but a clearer sense of who we are and how we might live with greater awareness, wisdom, and love. So as we bring this journey to a close, we invite you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep awakening, both within yourself and in the world around you. If this message resonates with you, we warmly invite you to subscribe to the Buddhism Seeds channel, like this video, share it with someone who might be inspired, and leave your reflections or questions in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together we can grow this space for insight, compassion, and meaningful discovery. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep walking the path with presence.